You are watching or listening to Strangers in Space, and for the next 60 minutes, we'll be doing something rather interesting, so you don't have to. Hi, I'm JR.
Hi, I'm John.
Hi, I'm Matt.
Okay, so I thought this was an interesting idea. I'll tell you quickly how it came about because I think I've got to give credit where credit's due. I was listening to the Radio Free Skaro advent calendar, and so a question came up. And in the way of these things, several minutes into the conversation, I was suddenly struck by the idea. So I don't remember exactly how the question was phrased, and I can't remember quite exactly. I think it was something like if there was one more Peter Cushing movie and you could choose any story from the history of Doctor Who, what would that Peter Cushing movie be? And they ended up on the Time Monster, actually, which is the story that immediately popped into my head when I heard the question. I went, obviously, it's the Time Monster, and they all finally came around to that too. I think I may be conflating two episodes. Anyway, it was a question by the General Witchfinders, and I did ask Stephen. I did mention that I was planning on doing this, so I'm not like stealing their thunder without, making contact about it first. But as I was listening to that episode, I thought, oh, I wonder what would have happened if the Cushing movies had been successful enough that they just carried on. And so the format for a podcast I thought we should come to is let's go through the classic era of Doctor Who and choose one story from each season that gets turned into a Peter Cushing style Doctor Who movie.
Are we ruling out the first two seasons?
We are
Because they've already
ruling
been done?
we are ruling them out because they've already been done. But I mean, I think we can ask the question, are there any stories in either of those seasons that we think would have been more appropriate than Doctor Who and the Daleks or Dalek Invasion Earth 2150 AD? And I think pretty much immediately I'm going to say probably not. But I mean, let's ask the question. An Unearthly Child, clearly you wouldn't do that, right?
No, no, that's
So
specifically TV, the format for the show, for setting up a long running show. It's not a movie.
exactly. The first one was always going to be Doctor Who and the Daleks. I think there are two stories in the second season where you can go, would that have been, maybe three actually, that you can possibly say, would that have been more interesting? I mean, even Planet of Giants, I think, has a shout. If it had been the character of the Doctor and the idea of the TARDIS that had been the most successful thing about Doctor Who rather than the Daleks, a story where they shrunk could have been interesting. A story where they go back into Roman history, because I think Roman history has always been one of those eras that school kids are sort of feel more of an affinity towards and is more fun to be taught. Could have been interesting. The Web Planet, where it's just aliens, giant insects, could have been interesting. And
It's
the
a
time,
proper B movie. They do that as.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we've got to imagine these all with Peter
Yeah.
Cushing as the Doctor in a very B movie, RO stroke
Yeah.
Hammer style. And then the other one is the time meddler. You could have maybe done something that's about a time paradox. So I don't know. Do either of you think any of those might have worked better than Dalek Invasion Earth?
I think the Time Meddler is too small scale. I don't think it's a movie idea because you're
It
just
could
stuck
have
in that
been.
kind of. I was like, unless you expand it to maybe include the Harold bits, because obviously
Yeah.
the because it
Well, and the Vikings. You could have given the
yeah.
Vikings a bigger role, couldn't you?
Yeah. But being Fanscom, the first thing I thought was that the third Dalek film was going to be an adaptation of The Chase.
Yeah.
So The
I am
Chase has that.
specifically ruling that out because it's
Yeah.
in season two, and so we
Yeah.
can't consider that.
Yeah. But again, I think that could have worked because it's got that B movie thing, the perils of Pauline stuff as the lingo of Doctor Who goes with Terry Nation with the B movies and stuff. Yeah, I think to work, it has to have a big kind of concept you can hook it on.
Hmm.
And not all, I think, yeah, Planet of Giants, you could make it easier because Planet of Giants does some really nice things with just BBC Studio. So if you had the film money, you could get some really kind of trippy visuals on that and
I,
expand it.
yeah, I think so. So that's in with the shout. Matt, do
And
you
I
want to
think
call of? Go on. Sorry.
so that it's tempting. So I think the chase is tempting, but because it has the time travel and it has the multiple locations and I think that would work really well in a film. And that's something that the first two, the Daleks and Daleks Master, Daleks Invasion of Earth, don't have. Is that sense that they have like little snippets where they demonstrate it can time travel, but you don't really travel in the TARDIS that much. I think my issue with the Time Meddler is, and the Romans is, you're dealing with one. You're basically bedding the story down in one location in one time, and so you've lost the time travel. Ironically, lost the time travel function, the travel function. You've lost the aliens, monsters bit. So the chase sort of solves that by still having those, but also having a story structure slightly different from the first two, or Dalek's master plan. But we're not allowed to choose any of these. But I'm just saying that these stories sort of solved that by making it a bit more mobile. The other one that sprang to mind was the War Machines, which the challenge with that
Skipping
is
ahead a
That's
season already.
season 3, yeah.
the challenge
Sure.
of that is making it more different from Dalek
Well, we've
Invasion
not
of
got
Earth
to
justify
season
it.
3 yet, Matt.
Yeah, but I can't remember what comes in season 2.
Well, I am, and that is why
Okay.
I am
And I am.
literally about to start as a new group chat where I can
Okay.
put the stories. So hang on. If I bring up John and it's not going to let me do this.
I can do these things off by heart.
Yeah, it
I'm a
should be able to.
professional.
I'm normally okay. It's just those early Hartnells just like blend one thing into another.
Right, I am putting this into our. So here we go. In WhatsApp, you should have the list in front
WhatsApp.
of you
Okay.
now. So yeah, so you should be able to scroll down there and have a look.
Okay.
And while you do that, I'm going to tell you the other thought I had before we started this podcast, is that I don't think we'll be regenerating the Doctor when they regenerate them on telly, right? Because in the movies, they wouldn't be doing that. And if you look at Peter Cushing and various other actors in film series, like the Carry On films or whatever, actors, because they're only making one film a year, would stick with those film
Yeah.
series for sort of years on end because you can do other things at the same time. It's not like you're stuck in a job.
Well,
So
this is what Ob versus Charity Cushing books have done. They've stuck with Cushing, and if they want to expand it, they've gone, it's a radio series. So, of course, you can, that's much less time for any actor.
well,
They'll be happy to do that.
I've done something slightly different. I've realized that we've got 24 seasons to cover. So I've decided that after 10 seasons, Cushing retires, which means we've got to choose 8 stories for him. And then because there's 16 left, I've decided we're going to have another Doctor for 8 and another Doctor for 8 after that. And I'll tell you now, Alan Dale, who often got talked about for Doctor Who, and then is another stalwart of British film series, is
Jim
going to
Dale.
be
Jim Dale.
Jim Dale.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
because I always think of Alan Dale when I say Jim Dale is going to be our second Doctor
Okay.
for seasons 11 through to 18. And then we've got a third Doctor from season 19 to 26. And I'll tell you who that is when we get there. But yes, Alan Dale's on the horizon. Alan Dale, I keep saying it. It's stuck in my head.
So the space museums are possible. So looking at the stories in seasons 1 and 2.
Bearing in mind, we've got 26 seasons and an hour, which means we've got 2 minutes per season.
Yes. The problem are that they're very much divided between historicals and basically very similar to the films that have already taken place. So for me, it's either the Space Museum or the Chase. And the Space Museum would be interesting.
Or Dalek Invasion of Earth.
They've already done that one.
No, that's what I mean. We're not choosing a new story for season 2. We're choosing new stories from season 3 onwards. They've done season 2.
That initial conversation is, would these have worked?
I'm just saying, is there anything that they should have done instead of the Dalek Invasion of Earth?
No. They did the right ones.
Absolutely. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's get to season 3 then. Right, season 3. This is where we start choosing what will they do for the third year. So in 1966, they make an adaptation of a story from season 3 with Peter Cushing and maybe some of the actors who've been in the other 2 films. That's not the important thing. We know the lead actor, we know the tone, and that's what we're choosing the story for. So we're not necessarily choosing the best story for them to adapt, but the one that most suitable for the tone of story that they're telling. And of course, it doesn't have to be Daleks. And in fact, it'd probably be pretty dull if we just chose Dalek stories all the time.
Well, as you said, we're imagining a universe where the most interesting thing is the Doctor and the TARDIS, not the Daleks. So that's
Exactly.
taking that factor out.
Except if you choose Dalek's master plan, you have you turn the first two films into a trilogy that has a big conclusion, and you have the TARDIS running through time. So you get all the benefits of the chase. You get the historical stuff, which is something that you don't get in the first two series. Is that you get in the first two series, you get the Daleks on their home planet. The second film, Daleks on Earth in the future. Daleks in the past is a really great third film for a 3-film arc, and then you can move on and create your own monsters or have the Cybermen or whatever.
Well,
the one thing about Dalek Master Plan to me, it's designed as a series. It's not designed as that one movie. So
Yeah,
I don't think it structurally works.
You'd have to cut it down, I
you
think.
could kind of give it you could give it the same structure that Star Wars has: Planet A, Planet B, Planet C.
Yeah.
So you could do it like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw out another big idea. I think if you're not going to go Daleks, then to have the Doctor turn up in the Battle of Troy would be a great idea that kids of that period would probably love. Or alternately, the gunfighters. So either the Battle of Troy or the gunfight at the OK Corral. But either of those things, I think, works as a sort of 80-minute Peter Cushing, slightly hammy Doctor Who movie.
Whereas I would go the Celestial Toymaker, because I think that's way more suited to be a film, and you don't need to make it that episodic thing, that you don't need it to drag as it maybe does across those 4 episodes. You know, the deadly games, you can make them you can really play into that, and you just get a nice antagonist as well for the Doctor in that.
I wonder if you're making a film, then putting it on location as much as possible, because that's the other trajectory that these films are on, and actually films in general are on. You have a studio bound film, then you have a film that's a lot of it is on location. And so the problem for me with the Celestial Toymaker is it's a story designed to be
Studio
basically
bound,
in
yeah.
an Avengers set. This kind of claustrophobic, weird kind of studio bound story. Whereas something like the Gunfighters could be done quite well on location. But the problem with the Gunfighters is you lose, again, is my general issue with these films, you lose everything that makes Doctor Who distinctive apart from the Doctor, and you lose the monsters which make it.
But I think, but that's the point. We're not talking about the series, we're talking about a film series. And so I think you can lose those things, frankly.
But I think it's more important with the films that you retain some of them, because Peter Cushing hasn't been the Doctor, isn't recognisably the Doctor at that point from 2 films. So you put him in.
I think he would be for kids of the 60s.
It just feels like you put Peter Cushing in the Wild West rather than he hasn't really justified his character yet.
But no, I think that's it. You put Peter Cushing in the Wild West, like you put Peter Cushing in a sort of post-apocalyptic future with Daleks. I think that's the point.
Doctor does work well in the Gunfighters.
Yes,
because Carl's playing comedy, he's playing the kind of bumbling, and Cushing's Doctor's kind of that innocent abroad. He's that well-meaning, bumbling scientist type.
Those comedy sequences
work really well in that.
Those comedy sequences with Castle and Cribbins from the first 2 movies, you get to do that with Cushing in a Gunfighters, right?
You can imagine playing off Doc Holly really easily.
I think you'd get a watchable film, a bit like when Carry On did it with Carry On Cowboy. But I don't know what would justify it being a Doctor Who film.
But I think you're overthinking it, Matt.
With Doctor Who, because Doctor Who, the Cushing Doctor Who isn't a character. He's a bumbling human grandfather.
It's a kid's film.
The concept of Doctor Who is he travels in time, and it's more about the TARDIS, and he goes to alien planets or he goes to the past. And I think that.
But that's the concept. of the TV series, and I think you're looking at it through slightly modern eyes. Whereas what I was trying to do was like, what would you do if you were making a kids' film in 1966
Yeah.
with
And I
Peter
think,
Cushing, who can go anywhere?
yeah, and I think if you're a kid in 1966, you'd want something a bit more unusual than Peter Cushing in the Wild West,
Well, that's why
because
I'm
because
doing
his
26 of these.
because his character isn't. Yeah, but we're talking about individual films. That's the point, not a series. We're talking about whether an individual film would work. And I don't think the Peter Cushing Doctor is alien enough or weird enough or stands out enough that if you put him into the Wild West, it basically becomes a bit like John Cleese in Silverado. It's kind of, he's almost too acceptable in the Wild West. I mean, there's an element of weirdness there, but there's not enough weirdness to make it to justify it.
But I don't think it's about the weirdness, is it? I think it's like a
Well, then,
Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court, isn't it? It's like just stick the odd, bumbly grandfather type in the middle of a Western.
And
yeah.
you're not getting locked down into a format of it's Daleks again.
Yeah, yeah. If you're not
Well,
careful, you just end up getting stuck in a rut.
well, then
Yeah,
putting the Peter Cushing Doctor into King Arthur's court, that would work because King Arthur's court is alien enough, whereas the Wild West, I
Well,
don't think is alien enough.
well,
That's my
go back
point.
to my first choice then, the Mythmakers.
Yeah, that might work.
See,
Yeah.
that's so obviously we've not come to a consensus here, but we have to move on to season four,
Okay.
and we need a choice for season three against which to balance season four. So I'm definitely going with the Mythmakers because I get the deciding vote.
Okay.
a benevolent dictator.
Right, I'll choose somebody else's for this next one. Okay, season four. Let's choose something for season four. I don't think there's any really obvious choices there. Do you know what I'm going to shout out as a kind of a
It's all studio bound stuff, really, isn't it?
The faceless ones would work.
maybe? Should I tell you what I thought
Mm.
strikes me looking at the list? Atlantis. So again, if you're looking at 7-year-olds, what are they interested in? Atlantis. So you do the underwater menace, obviously not like it is on the telly, but just bring out the Atlantis a bit more, bring out the fish people a bit more, bring out the weirdness of it a bit more, bring out maybe the sort of like historicalness of it a bit more, make it a society that's been living underground for 1,000 years and haven't developed at all in the last sort of couple of thousand years or whatever. So it's a society underground that has stuck 2,000 years in the past with fish people and it's Atlantis. I don't, that was the idea that struck me.
I'd agree. I would agree to the underwater menace if we can do the Web of Fear from the from the next season,
Well, that's
because
a choice we may make.
I think what I really want to see is, we haven't had a Cushing film set in contemporary Earth. We haven't had a kind of contemporary London is invaded, and having just watched The Satanic Rites of Dracula, which has Peter Cushing in contemporary Earth, I think he works really well in that kind of setting. So having the underwater, so for me, it would be the faceless ones because that sort of satisfies that for me, which is, there's nowhere. Gatwick is a really contemporary setting, and oddly, an unusual place to put the Peter Cushing Doctor because for all I talked about him, you know, not working in the recent past, actually not working in contemporary London sort of stands as well. He would be really odd, sort of bumbling around Gatwick. Um, but I'm happy to go with the
Well,
underwater
I
menace
tell you what,
if we can get something contemporary.
I just gave myself the deciding vote on the last one. So I'm going to say, John, I'm giving you the deciding vote on this one. So is it my choice? Is it Matt's choice? Or do you have a third choice?
I was thinking Evil of the Daleks because you've had the first two, and
Ah,
then you can lose the Daleks permanently, and you can cut out
yeah.
the interminable middle section or reduce it to like 10 seconds.
I mean, that's going back to obviously the chase would be the third film. How can we do a Peter Cushing film, which is the chase, but without using the
Yeah,
chase? So it's
and
either
it
Daleks
and
Master
it's
Plan or Evil of the Daleks.
and it has the contemporary London setting as well,
Yeah,
plus the
yeah.
Doctor in the past. It's got a lot of kind of different elements you can
Yeah,
play with
you
on
can
that.
see how Cushing would work. The Cushing Doctor would work his way into that story
Yeah,
quite neatly, because he always comes back to 1960s Earth in London.
Yes.
So you don't have to have him trapped here, or
I mean, they
The
nicked the
TARDIS can still
TARDIS
be
out to his back
stolen. Yes.
garden rather than
Yeah.
nicking out Gatwick.
Yeah.
One other thought, though, there's one other story there that kind of screams this could be a high enough concept for a Cushing movie. It's Doctor Who on the moon.
Yeah.
So
Particularly if you're re-releasing it around 69 or so, if you're making these with that lag.
yeah,
I mean that could be a season 5 or season 6 influence film. You can still have the good thing about these 1960s Doctor Who stories is they basically repeat themselves every other year. So
well, yeah.
if you want a Peter Cushing Doctor Who set on the moon, then you either do it now or you wait 2 years and then do it with Ice Warriors.
Or
So
yeah, Seeds of Doom,
yeah,
Seeds of Death. Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Okay, so John, what are you choosing for season 4?
I'm going with Evil of the Daleks.
Okay. And
Oh,
John's talked me down.
controversial. Okay, season 5 then, and Matt, you'll get the deciding vote on this, so I'm going to ask you last. John, any thoughts strike you about season 5?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I'd be tempted to go with Enemy of the World because it's different, but then again, I keep thinking Fury from the Deep could be an opportunity to do something quite different here. If it has got that kind of weird antagonist, that kind of formless antagonist, and you can do a lot more with it than maybe you suspect what they do on screen. So it's not going to be insight. You can actually go and probably film on the rigs. You can actually get some kind of real verity to that. So maybe I think Pure Deep, but really, I think I'm leaning towards Mass Choice.
Well, I'm going to
Oh,
throw another
I've
idea.
changed my choice.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
But maybe you've changed it to what I'm about to bring up.
Okay.
Because so I think every time I look at these, I'm thinking, what's the highest concept that 7-year-old kids are going to buy into? And in this case, I think there's a really high concept that 7-year-old kids are going to buy into, but that also the producers of the movie, knowing they've got Peter Cushing, are also going to buy into, and that's The Abominable Snowman. Because Yeti and putting Peter Cushing in his bumbling Doctor Who guise into a Hammer movie, that writes itself. So my choice would be The
It
Abominable
did.
Snowman.
It did write itself because Peter Cushing was in the Abominable
Exactly.
Snowman, the Hammer movie. So
Yes,
effectively,
yes.
I mean that did strike me is Peter Cushing has already made it, so it might as well go with it.
And now
And
do it for fun.
it did look really good. Um,
So have you got
yeah.
a third choice, and what are you going to
Well, no,
pick?
that was my sudden no. So I changed my mind and I dropped the Web of Fear because it was satisfied by Evil of the Daleks.
Right.
So now we've done that. So now it is basically. I mean, Enemy of the World could be quite interesting. We know that Cushing, and we are. This is a big assumption that Cushing would agree to make all of these films because he doesn't like playing Doctor Who and he gets more money back at Hammer. But Cushing playing a kind of a twin role would because he plays evil really well. We know that, and his Doctor Who is one of the more oddly extreme performances he gives,
Mm.
which is weird because it's quite a sedate, kind of friendly character. But if you look at his Dr. Frankenstein or Professor Frankenstein and his Van Helsings, they're all very similar to one another. And his Sherlock Holmes are all very similar. Some are evil, some are good, but they're all played pretty much the same. Whereas his Doctor is very kind of mannered and kind of
Yeah.
wiggy. So you take that away, you strip that away, and he gives a kind of a Dr. Frankenstein performance in the film at the same time. That could be quite interesting if he played a dictator.
So make your
So
choice.
I'm going with Fury from the Deep because I really like the idea of helicopters and oil rigs.
Blimey. All right, season 6. Season 6. Which of these screams out to be made as a
It's
sort of
all over the place, isn't it?
it is, and there's some sort of it's less high concept. So the goes to the moon thing, you're right, sort of gets satisfied by the seeds of death, but it's less interesting about it. There's no moonwalks or anything like that. The one that sort of shouts out to me, actually, funnily enough, is the Space Pirates. Because again, I'm still thinking of 7-year-olds, and I'm thinking comedy space pirates, comedy-ish space pirates, but with a nasty edge. Peter Cushing playing against that, and just the idea of pirates. Because I'm just thinking back to my own childhood when the idea of pirates was much more romantic, and you know, I mean, we still get it with the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, right? You do a Pirates of the Caribbean type movie in a sort of Aru stroke Hammer stroke Carry On style and set it in outer space. I don't know. I think that kind of says to me this is what a Peter Cushing movie in 1970 could be. Matt,
Yeah,
oh, John,
yeah.
go on.
No, go on. No, I was thinking of the Space Pirates as well because again, you could have some real fun with the effects work on that, particularly again with the
Yeah,
movie budget. Maybe you get Derek Meddings in at this point to go and do it properly.
there are,
So
yeah, there are two other stories in this season that also both sort of scream this would be a good concept for a sort
see,
of
the Mind Robber was the other one for me.
and the war games. I think the
Yeah,
Mind Robber and the war games both have concepts that would translate well to a sort of 80-minute movie. Matt, what do you think?
I think the Mind Robber would have to be of a phenomenal budget to
yeah,
work. Otherwise, it's again like Celestial Toymaker. You're talking about a studio bound kind of. You're either talking about micro budget or a massive budget.
Yeah,
It's very. I can't see how sort of a large, medium-sized budget works with the Mind Robber. Um, Space Pirate. I agree with pirates and the appeal of pirates to children. The problem with space pirates is they're not really. They're just called pirates, aren't they? There's something appealing about pirates, but then if you do the Highlanders, which is from a few seasons back, that would sort of again satisfy that kind of stuff. I was sort of leaning towards the war games as a way of getting that kind of swashbuckling because you could potentially have, you know, the
yeah.
high everything from the Highlanders in there and from World War I and from the American Civil War and bringing those things in and
You
I
could
mean,
use anything, couldn't you?
effectively, they've already done bits of that with the films because there's what's is it Dalek's Invasion of Earth that has the Romans
Right at the very
in
end.
it, right?
The
yes,
very first one,
Yeah,
isn't it? The
yeah,
Daleks.
that's yeah.
and
Yeah.
so we know that that's kind of a temptation, and it's always yeah my idea about getting as many historical things, but also having that kind of alienness to it to make it an actual a distinctive film worth telling.
And you don't have to do the whole Time Lord stuff because
No,
Doctor
no,
Who in the
yeah, you
movies is a
wouldn't.
human inventor, right? So you forget the Time Lord stuff at the end and just concentrate on the people who are creating the war games and stealing soldiers from Earth.
Yeah.
So deciding vote comes back to me for this one, and I'm going to go with the war games because I do think any kid in 1970 watching a Doctor Who film with Peter Cushing would be entranced to see World War One soldiers fighting Romans, fighting, I don't know, gladiators and fighting ancient Greeks and all whatever else, and American Civil War soldiers. I think that would be manna to the children of 1970. So then we come to the 1970 season and the 1971 film, season seven. Only four stories to choose from. Matt, John, choice, the deciding vote swings back round to you. So I'm going to ask you last. Matt, is there anything that
I think it's oh, I mean any of them really. I mean
sort of,
they could all be adapted. I think Spearhead. It's tempting to adapt Spearhead, because it's got that conspiracy edge to it. I mean, again, they've most of them have a conspiracy edge to them, but there's something really simple about the Autons that I think
plastic comes to
work
life?
quite well. Um, and they haven't done that before in one of the Cushing films. Um, again, it would be a kind of a at this point, I think he'd be enough of a fixture and enough of a character where you can put the TARDIS to one side and just have him as a kind of an eccentric human inventor that's brought in by the military to sort of tackle the Auton invasion. It's coming out of the War Games film, which has got a lot of history in it. So this would be a sort of a refreshing contrast with that. Um,
I Yeah, and I don't think you actually need the military in it as much as would be in Spearhead from Space. Maybe he's not brought in as a military advisor, but he does that himself. He begins advising them because he's there rather than
yeah,
because they
yeah,
sort him out. I think the other, so yeah, you could do Ambassadors of Death, but I don't think that's quite conceptual enough. And you could do Inferno, but I don't think that's the right thing for a kids' film at this period, especially as it doesn't actually do an awful lot with it doesn't do, I don't think, enough with the alternative Earth stuff. But the one that does scream to me a bit is what if you had lizard people from the time of the dinosaurs and the occasional appearance by a dinosaur? So I think the other big choice is plastic people or lizard people. And I think I'd be tempted to go with lizard people just because I think having a colour Peter Cushing style film set in the countryside with lizard people running around and the occasional Tyrannosaurus Rex, basically, that's the kind of thing that kids would lap up, I think.
It's human dinosaurs. Let's face it, that's the appeal.
Yeah, totally. Go on then, John. What's your choice? One of those two or something else?
I was looking at that. I don't think Inferno works for Cushing's Doctor. I think it works Pertwee's Doctor perfectly. Again, similar with Ambassadors. It's going into space. Maybe you can get him on the periphery, but it's almost too hard edged for that. So yeah, it would be again between Spearhead and Silurians. And I think Spearhead, it's already quite familiar. Whereas Silurians, yeah, I really kind of like that idea. It's you probably change the thrust of it a lot in the making
Yeah,
of it. I think you have to with any of these to make them as that kind of push film.
yeah, I think so, but I think that's part of the question, isn't it? That's part of the
But
concept
yeah,
of the podcast.
you get the humanist people, and you get that kind of the moral thing of should we blow them up or should we not? And that would replay nicely with Cushing's Doctor, I think, because Cushing's Doctor, again, being this kind of innocentish kid guy. So I
Plus,
think I would edge for the Silurians. Yeah.
plus, it's Matt's choice for season 8, so he gets to choose plastic people for that one if he
If
wants
he
to.
wants them, yeah.
Hey, Matt.
yes, there is an obvious one
Although,
in season 8.
I
That
mean, I mean, actually,
I
so
mean,
I'm going to come to you last again, Matt,
yeah,
because you're going to make the choice. But yes, okay, so the Autons are back, and it's more about the different things that plastic can do. So you can have a lot of fun with that. And yes, the reason why I've brought that up is because obviously there's another choice, which is the demons. Actually, I think the Claws of Axos is kind
yeah.
of a fun one that you could do for the kids. But I think actually the Claws of Axos already is that. So I don't think you need to do it as a movie.
But you could return it to its roots. You could go, Actos lands in Hyde Park. You
Yeah,
can't
you
dodge
could
that
do.
offering
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
around. There's a really interesting film version to be made there.
Yeah. And it's all about the offer to the government, isn't it?
Yeah,
So, and in the TV version, you've got it's all about the offer to the government, and we see the entire thing through this funny little chap, Chinnery or whatever he's
oh,
called, who turns up. But
Chin,
if you,
Horatio Chin.
that's right. If you did it as a movie, you could do that stuff properly rather than just have this one guy there to represent the
I think
government.
Cushing's scenes with him would be brilliant. Him just that it's a different kind of writer's fury,
I
but I
mean,
think it has more weight.
it's so sweet you guys talking about the film that's not going to get chosen for this.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly. It's
that's
fine.
why I didn't
Yeah,
go to you
Yeah.
first, Matt.
yeah.
Go on then, Matt. What are you
Well,
choosing
I
for
mean,
season 8?
at the risk of being
A cliche.
a cliche, there is something surely un undroppable. The idea about putting Cushing into a Hammer movie
But
in his role as the Doctor
yeah.
and sort of sending up, lightening the Hammer movies. So you're basically producing a Hammer movie for 7-year-olds with the safety of Cushing.
Does that work though? Is the demons just a bit too much for a 7-year-old's
Well, if it's,
Cushing
I mean,
movie?
it would have to be sanitized. I think
Yeah,
it would be sort of, it would, yeah, they'd roll it back. Much like with the Silurians, they probably wouldn't have the plague in the middle of it. I
No.
think with the demons, you'd probably you'd probably ease back a little bit. It might be a little bit more adult than some of the earlier, but then the Dalek invasion of Earth isn't necessarily,
it's got its moments.
and
Yeah,
it's darker than the Daleks, I think. The only thing that lightens it is Cushing's portrayal. I mean, Cushing's sweet kind of, he is he is putting on a kids movie performance. Um,
yeah.
which if it was anyone else other than Cushing, you'd think, well, maybe just lighten it up or just ease back on that performance a little bit. But actually, it works, I think. And I think with something like the Demons, it would work even more. It would give Cushing something a little bit more to do, possibly. You take it a bit more seriously. I mean, if he's been in how many eight eight films by now, it means he's really enjoying the role and he's taking it seriously, and he is probably wanting to find nuance in it and things like that.
Well, he's only
Um,
got 2 more films to go then, hasn't he?
but yeah, definitely, I think that
Before he gets out of his
you,
contract.
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was very difficult not to choose the Demons, given Cushing and given the fact that you could get Lee in to sort of pastiche his
Oh,
Devil
he's
Rides
master. Yeah,
Out
yeah.
role. And suddenly, I mean, you might not sell it to the 7-year-olds, but my God, you'd get the 20, 30-year-olds going to see this Doctor Who film. And the series would just, yeah,
Expand the audience.
yeah.
Right, season 9 then. Um, for me, 100%. Of all the stories here, Sea Devils, I don't think so because of the way it's framed. But the time monster, definitely. Something weird is going on with time. And you don't wait till 2/3 of the story is through before you get to Atlantis.
And you
But
get Christopher Lee back.
we didn't do.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
true.
maybe you could, I suppose, because I wasn't thinking you'd have the Master in it, but yeah, maybe the last 3 Cushing films are Cushing against a Christopher Lee part, so we don't have to choose a Master one for the last one, but maybe we do that, and we're not going to regenerate in the movies. You just finish a movie with Cushing, and the next movie is 12 months down the line, and you just have a replacement actor in the same way as you've got replacement actors in the Quatermass movies or
Or
whatever.
Bond.
Yeah, or Bond. So you might change the character, but you don't need to see it. You just do a movie with a different actor playing the lead role. So we're not doing a regeneration story, and that's for season 10 anyway. But season 9, for me, it's the time monster all day long. I think it's a great concept that wasn't dealt with terrifically well on telly. Give it to Peter Cushing and a movie. Yeah, put Christopher Lee in, have them going back to Atlantis to solve the riddle of what's weird and going on with time. I don't know, for me. But you two guys, Matt,
Yeah, I think if we hadn't had Silurians and Fury from the Deep, I think the Sea Devils would be in with a shout.
But
Day of
we
the Daleks, I
don't.
think it is tempting to bring the Daleks back at this stage, but I think Day of the Daleks is a bit too dark. So the Time Monster does stand out rather from that season. Curse of Peladon's too stagey.
I think you
Um,
could make a case for the Curse of
Yeah,
Peladon, but you'd
I was
have
going
to
to.
go on then, John. I was just going to
Um,
ask you if you
no,
would.
no, it's that big goth thing. You can lean to again. You're leaning into kind of if we've lent into Cushing's kind of horror movies with the demons, you're leaning further into it with the Curse of Peladon. You can make it really spooky, play into that kind of gothic European atmosphere to it. And again, you've got that it's got that nice kind of variety of alien delegates as well. So you could go really wild on those. You know, you don't need to just go, here's Alpha Centauri who looks like a penis in a skirt or whatever. You could absolutely reimagine those with a cinema budget. So I think it is a really kind of good film. And again, Cushing's Doctor fits in really well as that ambassador. He bubbles through.
Yeah,
You get a real nice comedy strand of him trying to tell people he's not the ambassador, but something happens every time.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think there is a case to be made for it, but I know we're not going with it.
I know, but there is also a sweetness because Pertwee in that role isn't he's
There's no
talking,
sweetness to it. Yeah.
pretending to be the human ambassador, but actually he's the universal ambassador. He's got the universal view, whereas Cushing would really be
Mm.
Earth
Yeah.
Yeah.
because and the sort of historical Earth. So he's got that kind of he would work quite well in that role because he would bring, his memories of the Second World War or whatever just to this situation.
But I do
But
think it's probably a bit too talky. Whereas
yeah,
the Time Monster, plus again, as you say, with the Time Monster, you can, if that's the way you choose to go with it, bring back Christopher Lee for a rematch.
yeah,
So
And
I think
yeah,
it's up
all
it
for
the
that.
World
has,
War II planes, all that
yeah,
mad stuff.
has to be
Lovely.
that, doesn't it? Which brings us to season 10. So this will be our final Cushing choice. And your five choices again here. Obviously, the Three Doctors is off the table as it stands, but I guess there's a version of the Three Doctors that you could do. But I think that would also rely on Time Lords and time travel. So I think we're down to four choices, aren't we?
You reduce it to kind of the devil almost, but yeah, I was looking at going. It's rooted in Doctor Who's history, and you don't want to go into that with these.
Is there anything that does strike you then, John?
I've got the deciding vote, so I'm going last.
Oh, of course you have. Yeah, Matt.
I mean, for me, it's either Carnival of Monsters or the Green Death. I don't think the Green Death is suitable. You could take Frontier in Space and Planet of the Daleks and just mash them together quite happily, and lose a lot, but I think that's too big. So I think Carnival of Monsters works quite well in here, but you don't get the big the ending of the Christopher Lee trilogy, which is a shame.
I
Um,
mean, yeah, you couldn't. There's no way you could really fit him in that story,
well,
is there?
you could by so one of the good things about the television Carnival of Monsters is this kind of bureaucracy on the planet and the comedy with Borg and and the greyness of the aliens. I don't think that would work so well in a film. I think if you actually made it a little darker, so have the Doctor trapped in this miniscope and it being Christopher Lee as
Yes.
the master on the outside, and you make the outside a bit more kind of perilous.
Make the
That could
yeah.
work quite well.
Make the story more about the escape from the miniscope as
Yeah,
the Master's pulling the strings outside.
yeah.
I am
Make
going to make a case for the Green Death, though.
okay.
I think so. Environmental issues were a big thing in the 70s, so I don't think even in a kids' film that you'd necessarily completely avoid that. So I think having the general concept of the Green Death kind of works as long as that's fairly deep background. But what we've not had, and I don't think we'd get this necessarily next year unless we choose Planet of the Spiders, who knows? So I'm going to say that we won't choose Planet of the Spiders and do it here, is giant creepy crawlies. So I think you do a version of the Green Death where it's not just maggots, but just sort of general giant creepy crawlies to a degree. And it's all being caused by a computer that's gone wrong at a factory that's doing bad things. And the doctor turns up, and you've got a story about giant creepy crawlies. So I think the Green Death kind of does work as long as you push it in a certain direction, as long as you nudge the tone of the film in a certain direction. But yeah, I think actually for kids, the Green Death, if you did it right, could be a great sort of comedy horror suitable for 7-year-olds. John.
But the thing is, Carnival of Monsters has this thing about miniaturization, so you can fit creepy
Mm.
crawlies into that if you want.
Yeah, you
And
could.
and again, it's got that's Carnival of Monsters has that scope of locations. You're not limited to just it's a boat, it's the Jurassic swamps, and it's the planet. You could go all over the place. You could really open up that kind of idea. And while Carnival of Monsters is effectively, you could open it up to cinema. Almost as you could like do almost a series of mini genres. So yeah, I was coming down between Green Death and Carnival Monsters in my head, but I would, because it's more my kind of thing, I would go with Carnival of Monsters.
Fair
Just
enough.
as
Right, we're coming back with Alan Dale. Right,
Jim
I had
Dale.
no plans to turn this into a multi-part podcast, so I'm not going to cut off at this point and make it a three-parter. But what I will do is say, let's do the first half of Allendale, the next 4
Jim
seasons.
Okay.
Jim Dale. I keep saying it. I keep saying it. Let's do the first 4 Jim Dales, and then I will leave you of a humdinger of a tease, and we'll come back in a couple of weeks and do the latter half of Jim Dale, and then the 8 seasons that follow to take us up to the end. Because, I mean, this is fun enough to do right up to the end of the classic era, isn't it? So, yeah, let's do to the end of season 14. So now we've got Jim Dale. And the first one is a story from season 11. Is it Matt to choose now? It is, isn't it?
Matt will be the deciding vote.
Okay, so I'm going to throw out the Time Warrior because I think going back to the Middle Ages, castles, knights, a robot knight, and a funny little guy from outer space who looks like a potato and is controlling all this. I think it's already pretty much what we're looking for, and you wouldn't have to do an awful lot with it. But with that little bit of extra budget, maybe. And I think Alan Dale, done it again. Jim Dale. I think Jim Dale comes in and gives. So do you remember the Disney film of a Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's? I think Jim Dale comes in and gives it that energy.
Yeah.
So I think the Time Warrior is a perfect story. But seeing as Matt's choosing, I'm going to leave John to convince you of the really obvious choice in this season.
Invasion of the Dinosaurs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, again, it's dinosaurs. You've got one of our dinosaurs missing out of this. It's in the air. It's still there. The National History Museum is always huge. So, yeah, I mean, you don't need to move them out of London at this point. It's a big old story. You can have the Doctor working with the government. You can have him butting his head against all this, really establish this new take on the role. I think it could be a really fun one. I don't know if he wouldn't be quite as sweet as Cushing, but it'd be really interesting for him to play those scenes where he's butting up against the military. You don't even need to have that gap between stories. But I think this could be such a fun one. And again, it deals with the environmental issues that we didn't get around to in the Green Death as well.
Very true. Matt.
I mean, it was a choice between Death to the Daleks wouldn't quite work, would it? It was a choice between those two. I think
there's Planet of the Spiders, but like you say, even in Carnival of Monsters, you've already done the giant creepy crawlies by having the regular cast shrunk, right?
And you've got the dinosaurs already in the Silurians that you've done. So you've had Doctor Who versus the dinosaurs. Doctor Who.
Oh, is Matt going to make a surprising choice?
Doctor Who in the sort of Hollywood Middle Ages, but you would have to kind of camp it up a bit more. And oddly, I'd probably lose the Sontaran, or I'd have a sort of more kind of human. I think the Sontaran sort of confuses things a little bit for a movie. I think having a sort of an anti-Doctor from the present day, somebody who's stolen the Doctor's technology and has gone back to meddle with the Middle Ages, specifically with these kind of castles, that would work quite well. And I agree with like shiny robots in a kind of King Arthur's court. That's kind of too tempting to pass up.
Okay, well,
good choice.
There's a turn up for the books. Okay, now we come to an interesting dilemma, because now we've got Alan Dale making 7-year-olds movies in a Doctor Who sort of bumbly, styly, a bit like a Carry On movie, and we come to the Hinchcliffe and Holmes era. So John, so John, well, I mean, this is now what we've got to try and work out, isn't it? Is which of these stories could play as a sort of comedy sci-fi movie for 7-year-olds?
Well, your obvious one is Robot. Robot is obvious. It's a hangover from the previous year. It's not a proper Hinchcliffe Holmes story, is it? It's that last gasp of the Lex era.
And it's got the King Kong thing as well as the robot thing.
It's a recognizable icon. You could play you hand it to whichever director you're doing it, and if they're worth their salt, they can play off those images, because King Kong was playing on the BBC at this point as well. So there's an element of familiarity.
And there was a new one just around the corner too.
Of
So
course,
clearly it was
76, yeah.
a concept that was working. Yeah.
So
In fact, that would
yeah,
come out at the same time as this,
if
probably.
you could be cynical and totally play up. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I've got the deciding vote, haven't I? So, Matt, do you want to
Yes.
make a case for
So,
any of the others?
Robots stood out as the obvious one. I think Revenge of the Cybermen you could do. I think it's possibly time to have a film set in space in the far future, because we've had quite a few kind of through the Pertwee era, quite a few sort of contemporary set stories or historical set stories. We haven't really been sort of space stations yet, or alien planets, or moons, or things like that. And I think this could be an opportunity to get the Doctor off the Earth and back into space. You'd have to tone down the plague a little bit. I think the Cybermen probably work with 7-year olds. The whole
We've not
plot in the
actually had a
film.
Cyberman story, though, have we?
No,
So the
no.
Cybermen would be a new thing in
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
The Doctor gets involved in a space war between the Vogons and the Cybermen and has to choose sides. And it's obvious from the start that you've got to choose the side of the Vogons, right?
Yeah, and you could get it out of the spaces rather than have it sort of studio bound. You could still film in Wookiee Hole. That would work. So, but that would be the only. It would be a very dark. It would be quite a dark film. I think it would be difficult to avoid the darkness, both in
Well, I'm
terms
gonna,
of tone and in terms of sort of setting.
I'm gonna briefly mention the other three. Genesis of the Daleks. Obviously, it wouldn't do, except we've not really had the Daleks for 5 years. And you could go back to the start of the Daleks and tell the story of where the Daleks came from. I think you could probably do a version of that that works for 7-year-olds, but I don't think that's an obvious choice. Weirdly, the other two, I think you could do versions that work for 7-year-olds. So the Sontaran experiment wouldn't be about a Sontaran experimenting. You'd change the title. But it could be, if you've just done the Time Warrior and you did have a Sontaran in it, you could have that little bit of continuity. You've been to the far past and seen a Sontaran. Now you go to the far future and see a Sontaran. So you could do a barren, deserted Earth that humankind wants to repopulate. Only this Sontaran's crash landed there, and he's causing all sorts of chaos. You could probably do that, but I don't think you would. And the Ark in space, yeah, getting eaten or getting eggs laid inside human beings by these giant insects, maybe not. But if you hadn't done the creepy crawly thing, you could do a version of the Ark in space that's about creepy crawlies, giant creepy crawlies on a spaceship, and somehow make that palatable for 7-year-olds. But I think robot is the obvious choice here. A giant robot who just goes King Kong at the end. So season 13, John, this will be your choice. So Matt, is there anything here that screams out this could be done for 7-year-olds
I
with
mean,
a Jim Dale?
there's so many films I'd like to see.
Yes.
But it's very difficult to see how Terror of the Zygons, Brain and Morbius, Seeds of Doom, even Pyramids of Mars could be suitable for a seven. The only one is the Android Invasion. Is is one that naturally works with that kind of age range. Um,
See,
uh,
I think you probably can do any of those other things depending on how you characterize it. I think if you
yeah,
fill it with actors who are British character actors giving turns, then the fact that they're giving turns changes the tone.
yeah,
So I think even something like Pyramids of Mars, take out the graphic death scenes, but instead have lots of character actors giving these turns as these sort of not comedy mummies, but you know what I mean? Are wandering around the English countryside. There's a version of that that works for 7-year-olds, I think.
it possibly works for 7-year olds, but then what is the film? What's the substance of the film? If you take the horror, because all of these things rely on horror, I think, as a
Yeah.
sort of a fundamental part of their story. The only one that doesn't really is Android Invasion.
It's
Uh,
still leaning into that almost possession trope, though, isn't it? That in a different
yeah,
way.
yes, it does, but it leans into it rather than it's not a sort of a core part. I mean, I love Pyramids of Mars, but you take out take the edge off the mummies and take out the kind of the really, really creepy performances, you're kind of left with not very much.
It's a
Something
version. There's a version of the android invasion where the village that they're replicating is the one where Doctor Who and his family live. So whoever the regulars are, you could have evil doubles of them. So you get to do the Inferno thing, but through the prism of the android invasion.
Well, the
where
opening
it's
right itself is just going around in his business, and it's slightly odd and something like a Midwich Cuckoos kind
And
of
you
thing.
connect it to the previous film. So what was the previous film? We decided
Robot.
Robot.
So you
The
don't
same
have to
people
connect.
doing it,
You don't
maybe.
have to connect it,
Yeah.
but you can have the Doctor coming back from a pre-title sequence of the Doctor off on one of his adventures with his friends, and then he comes back to the village where he lives. And
Well, I think
at that point, it's sort of that's where the film starts.
Well, I think we're into sort of mid or so 70s now as well. And I think movies for kids even is changing. So all that I said when we started the conversation in the mid 60s about you've got to remember this is a 1966 movie for 7-year-olds. Now we're talking about a 1977 movie for 7-year-olds. And I think that's a different thing. So I think
You can lean to, I don't know, Alan Garner kind of stuff, can't you?
or you can lead, but I think that's for slightly older children, so I don't think maybe you go that way.
Not quite heavy, but
But I
yeah.
think you can lean more into the continuity of it because these kids will also be watching the earlier movies on TV as they're growing up, so they'll understand the concepts. So I think you can play with the concepts a bit more. So I don't know. Yeah, I think for me the Android Invasion is the obvious choice, but make it about the movie continuity to a little degree. But John, yours is the choice.
I was going for the Android Invasion as well. And you can fix the ending because the ending is obviously just a complete mess on this. And that's the one thing you
Yes.
can offer with the movie. It's going to be focused. You could, and you can have a proper resolution to it. Yeah, I thought it had to be the Android Invasion because Hinchcliffe and Holmes, as they said, they were naturally trying to skew higher than the demographic we're looking at. They were going for the intelligent 13-year-old, I think is the phrase at the top of my head. So the Android Invasion is the obvious story that does have mild kind of horror elements, but it's stuff you could use to spook kids in the right way, I think. So yeah, again, like Robot, I think it really is the obvious choice for the season because maybe you could do a version of Zygons which isn't quite as creepy, which doesn't play into it. But yeah,
But
it's
you've got
Android
that
Invasion.
already with the Android Invasion, haven't
Yeah,
you, to a degree?
exactly. It's you're playing with duplicates either way. And I think it's the easier one to fit into the format we're looking at is the Android Invasion.
Right, the last one we're going to do in this episode, and then we'll do a part 2 of this where we go through the rest, will be season 14. And Matt's getting the deciding choice on this. So season 14. I think there are a few choices here if you massage them the right way. Talons of Weng Chiang is the obvious one to avoid. But actually, Victorian London is perfect for kids, isn't it?
I mean,
So a
it's
version
what it's
of
going to be.
well,
Spoiler
okay,
alert.
then let's talk about a couple of the other choices and let Matt talk about Talons of Weng Chiang. Robots of Death. I think creepy robots on some kind of spaceship or whatever, a sand miner, whatever it is. Creepy robots going wrong. I think that works for kids. Yeah, the others, the Hand of Fear. I think sort of what they do anyway is make a kid's version of an adult horror movie. Mask of Mandragora.
I was tempted by Mask, yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of the Mask of the Red Death stuff you tone down, but to have an alien presence in sort of Renaissance Italy.
Yeah, you don't have it burning the bodies. It does something different, something less obviously terrifying, I think.
Yeah.
To take that edge off it.
But I think there's a version of that. So I think essentially, I think there's sort of versions of all these things that you could do. Even something like the
Deadly
Deadly
Assassin is
Assassin.
that's maybe the one you have to leave out, I think.
Maybe
It's too much into a lore we haven't dipped into.
It is, but there's something about that middle section where you go off into a fantasy section that might be quite fun in a movie, but you'd have to jump through hoops to get there.
Yeah.
And even the face of evil, that high concept thing about the crash landed
That
party that goes off and forms two separate groups might not be as easy to explain to a 7-year-old, but I think you
no,
can.
it's I think it's not got enough to interest a 7-year-old almost. There's
Well, the
there's
invisible
great, yeah.
monsters
The
is the
invisible
thing that
it's
draws you in, I
invisible
think.
monsters. It's I know there's the Doctor's face there, but
See,
it's like Eddie is
Forbidden
not like that
Planet.
since he was that age.
Oh, really?
So yeah,
But
kind of a
the
bit
face of
dull.
evil in the tone of Forbidden Planet probably works better.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing because Hitchcock and Holmes leaned so much into movies that they loved that
Yes,
it's
and the face of evil
yeah,
is
you've
Forbidden
got to
Planet,
you've got to dodge the remake idea of it.
but it's done so much darker. But if you didn't do it darker, but did it in the tone of the original, I think Face of Evil works. But anyway, Matt's making the choice.
So I think if you tone it down a bit, don't make it about Jack the Ripper so much. Make it less racist, obviously.
Do you play into Holmes more here? Make it a Holmes-ish film?
Well, this is what I'm thinking, and it would work slightly better, I think, if it was the Cushing version of the Doctor, because again, you'd get Cushing.
Even Jim Dale, I think, would
Well,
make a terrific, fun. Yeah.
I think that I think Jim Dale and Peter Cushing as the Doctor are so un-Holmes-like that they'd be quite fun trying to fit into that role and
Yeah.
be forced into that role
Clash, yeah.
in a sort of fog-bound, smog-bound London. Bernard Cribbins, say, or the equivalent character, then becomes quite a nice sort of Watson figure. And then you've got a Sherlock Holmes pastiche with a time travel element. You just have to sort of, ease back on, again, some of the racist bits. Although this is still the 1970s, so they're still making Charlie Chan, Fu Manchu movies.
Black and White Minstrels is on telly this year. It's its last year, isn't it? 78, I think. This would be 78.
Like 78, yeah.
And I grew up watching Fu Manchu, so that's well into the 80s. They were still.
Well, Charlie Chan was repeated on BBC Two.
Yeah, I watched Charlie Chan, so it's
I mean, you could do a version of this that doesn't have the Chinese element at all and is just about a sort of alien presence of some kind in fog-bound Victorian London.
I think the Sherlock Holmes element is the thing that works in a film, and make it a sort of Sherlock Holmes pastiche. And again, playing on.
Oh, I've just had an idea, but so Talents of Weng Chiang, but you take the Chinese stuff out, and because it's in production and has just been made, you add in an element of Horror of Fang Rock. And so Talents of Weng Chiang becomes a murder mystery when the Doctor has to play Sherlock Holmes, working out which one of the suspects is the alien in disguise.
Okay, there we go.
So you've basically just checked out the whole Talents of Weng Chiang.
Yes, but that's the setting. That's the important thing, isn't it?
I think the Sherlock Holmesness is the thing that you would bring to the fore.
The alien is there committing a murder in order to get the time cabinet so it can get back to its home planet. So you keep a lot of the story elements of Talons of Weng Chiang, but replace the Chinese stuff with the Rutan stuff from Horror of Fang Rock. So it still is Talons of Weng Chiang, but all the bad stuff is gone, and instead you've got all the good stuff from the story that follows it. I think it works perfectly.
Well, that's my choice.
Right, that's it then. Okay, so we will come back in a couple of weeks. We'll probably do Fixing Chris Chibnall next and then come back with this the week after. But we'll also choose stories from each of the seasons that go up to the end of the classic run that could have been made into these sort of standalone movies. And I'm going to say this because I've been gagging to say this all evening and we haven't got there because I was hoping we'd get through it much quicker. But at the end of Jim Dale's run, you've got to choose another Doctor to take you from season 19 up to season 26, so our third Doctor. And because Jim Dale is from a classic run of British movies, the Carry On movies, and because Peter Cushing was from a classic run of British movies, the Hammer movies, I figured that you would have an actor who does light entertainment and who appeared in the Carry On version of a Hammer movie, but was already cast in Doctor Who and played it against type. So now I think he comes back to Doctor Who, slightly older, slightly more sanguine, and plays it to type as a bumbling professor type. And so I'm casting as the third Doctor, Sir John of the Pertwees.
I knew you were going there.
So we will be back next time to choose 4 more Jim Dale stories, and then we'll be seeing what John Pertwee looks like in season
80s Doctor Who.
23 and season 24. Right, that's all to look forward to in a couple of weeks. Until then, I was JR.
I was John.
I was Matt.
And we will speak again soon.